Hello again! I am back with, again, another Destiny video. This is going to keep happening. I'm going to keep saying I'm going to make videos on, like, other games, and it's just not going to happen. It's just going to, we're a Destiny channel now, basically. But today, I kind of want to talk about, it was announced last week, at least at the time of recording. It was specifically, I've got the date here, it was the 14th of April, it was announced, talking about the raid and dungeon rotators that are coming next season, season 17 in Destiny. That's going to be both weekly and seasonal. And I kind of want to talk through some of my thoughts on it, and I feel like it's a bit of a flawed system from what we've been told so far. But to give context for people that are unaware or want to recap, there's going to be 2 rotators every season for raids and dungeons. Well, technically it'll be 4, but there's going to be 2 seasonal ones. One is going to be a seasonal raid, and one is going to be a seasonal dungeon that's going to be featured for the entire season. I don't think they specified whether it is always going to be the most recent raid and dungeon, but that's what it's going to be come next season. We're going to have Valve the Disciple as the featured raid for the season, and we're going to have the new dungeon as the featured dungeon. And then every week, those other dungeons and raids that aren't featured are going to rotate every single week. So you're going to have a different raid and dungeon each week to complete and gain a pinnacle drop from. So that's the thing. The pinnacle drops they're going to have a pinnacle drop at the end of the weekly. If I understand correctly, there's a pinnacle drop at the end of the weekly dungeon and a pinnacle drop at the end of the weekly raid, and then there's pinnacle drops for every encounter for both the for the 2 featured seasonal featured raids and dungeons. And on top of that, you're going to be able to farm legendary rewards from those raids and dungeons. The exotic reward, I'm guessing, is just going to be on the weekly lockout as it has been for a while now. Well, since launch, I guess. But that legendary reward lockout that you get per week is going to be removed for both the weekly featured and seasonal featured raids and dungeons. So this system's a nice system. I think conceptually it's a nice idea to have a weekly featured raid, and particularly a seasonal one. I actually didn't expect them to do both. But it's not when this from what I remember, if we're comparing this to Destiny 1, because most people are going to compare this to Age of Triumph in Destiny 1, where I think that was when we had a weekly featured raid, and that was when they added new armor sets, or I think it was like revised, kind of updated visuals, but like a separate armor set for all of those 4 raids. On top of they had the exotic primary the exotic versions of every legendary in the raid that had a certain element burned to them, and essentially that would be an updated set of rewards. I think that was pretty much it as far as I remember. But here there's none of that. It's literally just the farming and the pinnacle drops. And to me, I just find that is just a really uninteresting kind of draw to make you want to play the weekly. It's nice to be able to farm them, but I just don't. I can't understand why pinnacle drops are still being used as a draw. That should just be a given. If you are doing any kind of end game content that's of some of relative difficulty, in terms of so there's the 100k Nightfall, and then you've got some of the playlist pinnacle drops, those, that stuff's fine, but that should just be a given. It shouldn't be the reason, the actual reward. It shouldn't be oh, you can do this and you get pinnacle drops. It's as much as people, I always find this funny, as much as people complain about the leveling system, and I don't know how Bungie would fix it. I think that's an extremely challenging problem to solve, but considering the amount of complaints that they get near enough every season, or even every year, it used to be every season when it was going up plus 50 per season, but now it's kind of dropped off. Now it's been more just the pinnacle drops. But yeah, as much as for all those complaints, it's just weird why pinnacle drops are still being used as oh, you can do this and you get a pinnacle drop. I'm that doesn't motivate me, but at least me. Obviously, I don't speak for everyone, but I feel like I speak for a large number of people. The thing that will get me to play these is, well, the farming, that we call farming, particularly dungeons, but 2 of the dungeons already have farming, so this is only kind of adding it for those other 2. Sorry, technically the new one's coming out as well, so I think there'll be 5 dungeons next season. There'll be 5 dungeons, and that'll be, 5 raids, I think. The weirdest part about this to me is the fact that this was announced during Witch Queen's reveal. They had kind of gone through what Witch Queen, they'd gone through Season of the Lost, and they'd kind of gone through all that, and they've hit all these big, all these really, all this big new stuff, and at the end they kind of just threw in there, oh, we're going to have, you know, they're gonna have featured raids, and that was back in that was August 24th, if I remember correctly, last year. And this system is launching next season, which is May 23rd, I think. So that's 9 months on from that reveal, and it's like, what? It's just pinnacle drops and farming raids. Like that's it. Like that is that's not even. I just can't. I just don't understand why this system has so little to it, kind of thing. And the weirdest part is that, again, as far as they've said, they're not even updating the old gear with any new perks or origin traits. Origin traits are big, like, hello. Now maybe that's a surprise. Maybe they're gonna wait. But to me, that would have been like, the draw here. And I almost think that if you're gonna have them be farmable, they should just increase the number of perks on them by, like, add an extra few perks on them. I don't, I'm sure there's better ways of doing it, but like, or you could, I don't want to say you could add them into the crafting system, because crafting is another thing entirely, but, something that makes this revised, this kind of feature a bit better. Now, not many people have really complained about it, but honestly, I've not even seen people really praising it. Like, I saw a few, like, oh, this is cool, I can't, I'm looking forward to running raids, but it's like, I don't know, I can't, the fact is, since Origin tries to become a thing, technically all of the new weapons since Witch Queen's launch have had, are, at least functionally, conceptually, they are better. They have an extra perk on them, essentially. And it's not like those old guns have the masterwork double kill orb gen. That's gone on all weapons, on all masterworks. So, functionally, like, conceptually, these new weapons that we have are better. So it's like, unless they, as I said, maybe they are adding origin traits to those. Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry, that's what I meant. Yeah, you got me. I'm having a really difficult time speaking today. I've been trying to read through notes, and it's terrible. But yeah, I just kind of, I don't understand this. Like I say, I think it's a flawed system. I think it's lackluster. And to me, I look at, Age of Triumph, and I don't necessarily think that they could have like this big sweeping, every raid and every dungeon gets this whole new armor set, whole new weapon set. That's a lot to do in one season on top of everything else. But I do think that, Bungie knew back in August last year that they were going to have a system like this that was coming into the game. So why wasn't that, like, planned out? Why wasn't it planned out that, they could update, like, people would go crazy over, like, some really cool looking new armor in, like, Last Wish. And to me, they could have done it every season. They could have had every season a dungeon and a raid gets a revised armor set that's like a new armor set, on top of like a revised set of weapons, And so maybe there's two versions of each weapon. You could do a lot of different things here, and it's not like you have to recreate the models. I don't want to. I don't want to, pretend I know how much time it takes to make certain things. But when you're introducing a new system, and you're going to announce it in your, yearly reveal stream, I kind of feel like, and it's not like this was a big point. This was kind of mentioned just in passing towards the end. But even so, they didn't talk about balance changes in that, from my understanding. There weren't anything that was like small quality of life things that were just kind of thrown in there. And maybe I'm misremembering. It's possible that I'm misremembering what was said. But from my understanding, they didn't really say very much about it. They just said, oh, they're going to have, they sort of suggested like featured raids, and that was kind of it. And I just don't understand why. And there's no extra cosmetics as far as we know. Again, some of this stuff could be being kept under wraps, but it's like, I feel like you could say something. You could say like, oh, when the rewards are updated, but we're not going to tell you how. Like, you don't have to tell people. And I just, to me, this is another example of like a system that Bungie are adding into Destiny that conceptually sounds really cool, but it just isn't given like a proper, like what to call it? Like, it's not given all these different features or this amount of like flair to make it stand out and to make people go, oh shit, like I need to go and run that right now. Oh, I can't wait for that. And imagine like on top of the new season you have all like returning to old stuff. And this is the thing, is that the game, I feel like the game really needs ways to they need to update old stuff as much as they are adding new stuff, so that when you return to the old stuff, you still feel like you're playing in like, oh, this feels fresh again. It feels new. And again, I don't know what they could do, but there's tons of things. But this is just like another, to me, and this isn't like a groundbreaking, like, oh no, they've really screwed it up. But like, when you look at certain systems and things that have been added in Destiny, they sometimes just launch in this like either incomplete or just uninteresting and sort of uninspired way. And I wrote a few extra things in it. It's like when Trials of Osiris came back in D2, like that had a bunch of problems and just had a not very good launch and took a while till it really got the revamp it needed. I think it was like it was last year in August that they got the revamp, and it was the year before in was it March, if I remember correctly, or something, that it announced that was released. So it took over a year, like nearly a year and a half, to kind of get to the state that a lot of players appreciate it. And even now there's problems, but they're much less significant than they used to be. Grandmasters, when they came out for Nightfalls, they didn't have like the adept weapons weren't a thing. It was just for extra upgrade materials, so people were just like, okay, you run it for like the title or whatever, and that's about it. Stasis, when that came out, that was in PvP. Crafting recently, one thing that not many people are talking about is like the difficulty of the game with Void 3.0 and Stasis and all this build crafting potential, where we just sort of melt enemies. Like, it just feels like there's so many things, and again, this isn't to say that like Bungie don't know what they're doing, because there's a ton of good stuff. Like Witch Queen, the campaign was great, and there's so many great things about Destiny. And if anything, my disappointment and critique comes from a place of just wanting the game to be better. Like, there's so much that this game can do, and so many different directions it can go in, narratively, gameplay-wise, and there's so much it can do. And yet, when you get a system announced like this, it's just like, well, who is this for? Like, I mean, like, sure, it's fun, but it's like, what's new about it? Like, oh, you can farm gear. It's like, well, sure, I mean, that's cool, but when we talk about raids and dungeons having, at least raids having, like, lower completion rates, I would imagine a large number of people have already got the gear that they want. Now, maybe this will change them, and maybe people will be more into running raids because they can farm it. There's excuse me, there's a lot of things that are good about the system. And I think that ability to farm, it's gonna, it's in my mind, there is a part of me that's like, yeah, that'd be cool to, if I get a chance to run a raid or, go through the dungeon and just, replay as much as you want, even for solo, like you could solo the first encounter. There's things you can do, but I'm just like, man, this would be so much more exciting if they just like threw in origin traits, added a new few perks or whatever. Especially if they had like a rare version of each weapon that could drop. There's all these different things that I'm just like, you can do, and I guarantee that, I'm sure this feature's not going to be, this isn't going to launch and be like this forever, but it's like, I just find that, I feel like in a few seasons' time, players will also be like, oh, I wish there was more from this, and that'll be suddenly like a new problem, and it's just like, why don't they just sit on these systems and wait until they have something really special to throw out there? And maybe that's not possible, maybe that's not, maybe they haven't got the time, maybe the priorities shift, and, I imagine, I mean, I imagine they're doing a lot, but I mean, I can't imagine the amount of work that Bungie have to do, and the amount of things that they're working on with like a new expansion in the next, the fact is it's 10 months from the next expansion. We've already gone 2 months. We're already, a sixth of the way there, basically. So, but to me, it's just this system feels very more like a quality of life thing than it does a weekly system, and that's like fine. It's not like this is a bad system over the game. It's not that it's it's going to be useful on some level, and it's going to be something that I'll most likely at some point end up interacting with, but it just doesn't feel like this has any kind of like, doesn't have anything crazy going for it. And honestly, I seriously, I don't understand why perk refreshes aren't a thing, because to me, that's happened in several other parts of the game, and that should be bare minimum here. I think it was Beyond Light that we had sorry, it's Season of Arrivals, we had the updated perks on raid and on at least raid weapons. I don't know if dungeons have got it. We had the Prophecy update that came in what season did Prophecy? I don't remember now, but there's been updates here and there and different weapons thrown in and whatever else, but I just I feel like there's more that could be done here, and like I'd be curious to know what origin traits they could throw onto these things. It's something that's maybe unique to them. Maybe they haven't got time. Maybe that'll come later. Maybe they don't want to throw all their eggs out straight away. They kind of want to drip feed these features or whatever, rather than throwing everything out at once, which is fine. It keeps people playing, I guess, and that's probably what they want to, they must have a plan for these things, but it's just like, it just sometimes feels like we move at a snail's pace a little bit, and I'm just like, that there's a lot of potential here, and it feels like a lot of it's being missed, at least at launch. Again, I'm just like, origin traits I'm going to keep banging on about. I'm just like, that I hope that is a thing, if they just haven't announced it yet. And one thing is, it's great that these farmable raid dungeons count for both the standard and master, like high difficulty versions. That's great. I love that. I think that is probably you know, that's something they could have not done, but they have done, and I think that's great. So if you want to keep running master raids and nightfalls or whatever to get the, you know, adept weapons or whatever, at least I assume you can farm adept weapons that way by completing the challenge. I assume that works like that. Um, Even so, yeah, as I said, I expect the system will see change later, but as it stands, I find that this is pretty underwhelming, and I wish there was a little bit more. When they announced it, I thought that I was skeptical about it because I didn't expect there would be more to it, and I was, you know, no offense, but I was kind of right, you know, and you know, maybe that's on me. It's not like Bungie specifically said they were looking to do that kind of thing, but I just think that there's these systems always have there's always like possibility for more and expansion beyond what they launch with. Sometimes you get like a solid system that you're like, oh, I can see how this can expand, like Void 3.0. I'm looking at that and I'm being like, it's crazy powerful, but you can see how this paradigm for the new subclasses like Stasis and Void, you can see how that's easier to add to than it would have been with the old systems. So as they're updating these old subclasses, it makes it easier for them to add new things like grenades and abilities. So there's a lot of great things that you can see them. You can see them launching great, and then you can see the potential they have in the future. But then there's some things like this raid rotators, I think crafting as well, that you can see the future, but sometimes it feels like that current state isn't actually where it should have been at launch. But that's as much as I've got to say on that. If anyone follows me on Twitter, you probably would have seen I had a bit of a pretty long Twitter thread that was kind of just more or less echoing these same kind of thoughts and rambling words. But yeah, again, maybe I seem hypercritical. Maybe it seems like this is overly critical, I guess. But as I said, it's not a bad system. It's cool that it's going to be in the game. Like that bare minimum, that is cool. It's cool that this is going to be a thing. I just think that Bungie could have done a little bit more with this, and but there's only so much time in a day, so much time. They've got again a million things they're working on. I can't imagine what it must be like, how busy it must be working on Destiny. But anyway, for now, I'll leave it at that. I'll let everyone ponder on that. Let me know what you guys think. I think there's, if you do you agree with me? Do you think that I'm being too critical? I think in some level I'm being too critical, but as I said, at bare minimum, it's a decent system. And I just think that it's another example where I feel like it could have been more at launch. But let me know what you think, because I'm sure there's lots of people that have different viewpoints on this kind of thing and whatever else, and But I think for now that's going to be it. I keep saying, as I said at the beginning, I'm going to keep trying to work on videos that aren't Destiny, and it doesn't happen. I've got, again, plans in my mind that hopefully we'll get there. But for now, hope you've enjoyed. Hope you've, let me know your thoughts and everything. And I'll see you guys next time. Ciao, ciao, ciao.